So I want to start with saying welcome. People have joined for this seminar from Sweden, where we're at today, and also from far away. So I want to start with saying a warm welcome to Sweden. And one of the reasons to get together this week is that yesterday, one of our PhD students, former PhD students, defended and very successfully acquired her doctorate title. So we now say again, thank you for yesterday and congratulations to Dr. Claire Wegner. Choosing to defend a PhD thesis in Sweden on the 10th of December is a little bit bold because it is in competition with other academic events. As some of you may know, that it was the big Nobel celebration yesterday. And we sometimes feel that maybe agriculture and veterinary medicine and animal science is very far away from the Nobel laureates. And because of that, I just want to draw the attention to a Nobel Prize handed out in chemistry 80 years ago. It went to a Finnish colleague, Arturi Ilmari Virtanen. He was a chemist, a biochemist, and he was awarded for his contributions to develop a way to preserve grass over the winter to feed to dairy cows in this part of the world, so that the vitamins in the feed were preserved and put into the dairy products. And this was in 1945. There was still a food insecurity in Northern Europe, and science in agriculture was focused on solving that problem. Since then, agriculture has become a very reliable source of food, and Northern Europe hasn't really faced any food insecurity. And science in agriculture has moved on to tackle other challenges like ecologic and economic sustainability. We're currently working a lot on the social sustainability of different agricultural production systems. And this is where the possibility to keep dairy cows together with their calves come into place. One of the reasons for initially starting to separate them is linked to food security. So back in the days when we didn't have enough food for people, it made sense to separate cow and calf to ensure calf survival with a minimum of resources going to the calf, and at the same time ensuring maximum harvest of milk for the human consumers who otherwise would be starving. We now find ourselves in very interesting times from a scientific point of view, where we have societal values towards strengthened animal welfare and production systems that are perceived as natural. And at the same time, Europe is again increasing its capacity for food security and food preparedness. So right now, this topic has many interesting questions coming into it. So it feels very timely to today be able to offer you this seminar, which will report on where the cow-calf contact research and practice is at in Europe, in America, and then as a closing presentation, we will learn about marketing of milk from cow-calf contact cows. So my name is Sigrid Agenas. I am the professor in management of ruminants at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and I am in charge of the cow-calf contact research project that has been running here since 2019. We are part of an EU Horizon project called TransformDairyNet Network, where we work together with other countries and research groups and farmer groups to exchange knowledge and forward the knowledge in this field. And I'm super pleased to be able to give the word to the project coordinator of TransformDairy Network, Professor Siobhan Mullan from Ireland. Siobhan, please take the stand and share the knowledge through the TDN network. Thank you.
I'm just looking why it's not full screen. Just give me a second. If it will go, maybe it doesn't matter. We carry on with that. Thank you so much, Sigrid. Very exciting to be here and to have this great collaboration between people interested in the topic of keeping cows and calves together in dairy farming. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what we've learned through the network. So it's going to be less research focused and much more about what the various outreach aspects of the project have kind of brought back into us. I just want to highlight that there will be a Menti polling opportunity a few times throughout the presentation. So if you go to menti.com, you can use the code that is there to join in with those polls a little bit later on. And I guess the reason that I'm interested in this is because I would really like to just start a discussion, perhaps afterwards about what dairy cow-calf contact means to you, and what are your expectations around it? What is acceptable? What are the kind of minimum levels that we should be thinking of? And also maybe even to just open the Pandora's box of whether cow-calf contact is the best term for us to use in the various different contexts that we will talk about keeping cows and calves together. So this is your prompt to think about some of these things. But I'm going to start by bringing together the information that we've gathered through what we call our National Innovation Practice Hubs. We call them NIPs for short. And they're really the heart of TransformDairyNet because, as Sigrid said, it is a network. And we have 11 of these NIPs across Europe. You can see them on the map indicated. And there are 10 relating to dairy cows and 1 related to dairy buffalo, based in Italy. Each of these NIPs has a facilitator associated with them, and then they convene a group of interested farmers. They may be farmers who are already practicing cow-calf contact, or they may be farmers who are interested. And they may also be associated people. So, for example, veterinarians, advisors, farm assurance schemes are also part of these NIPs. And they have brought in information from their individual groups, but also what they know more widely within their country. And this has been compiled by Janina and Kirsten from the Tunen Institute to give us a little bit more information about the state of play across Europe. So in 4 of our regions, we have very little or almost no cow-calf contact. So, for example, I'll just run through them. In Estonia, Irie, our facilitator, has found 1 farm who used to do cow-calf contact, is interested in starting up again. But most excitingly, just very recently, the vocational school for agriculture has a dairy farm, and they have started a small trial of cow-calf contact on that farm. But beyond that, we haven't found any other farmers. In Greece, we have just been alerted to 1 small cow-calf farm in Crete as part of a sort of agro-tourism organization. But again, we have struggled to find any other farms. In Italy, as far as our dairy farms are concerned, we have found a few farms that keep cows and calves together for relatively few days. I mean, maybe 5 days and maybe a little bit longer. But we haven't found a substantial number of farms that are keeping cows and calves together for a longer period of time. Our dairy buffalo group in Italy have found 2 farms doing cow-calf contact via a foster cow system, both in slightly different ways, and they are part of the network. And then in Ireland, we have a UK Ireland NIP, and in Ireland, we have found 3 farms that do some form of cow-calf contact, and I'm going to tell you about one of them at the end. So for all of these, if you're aware of farms and farms outside of in countries outside of the network doing cow-calf contact, then we ask you please to get in touch, to share them if you know of, especially if they're on social media or anything like this. We'd love to make contact with them in the network. So then we have the group in Norway, Sweden, so another joint NIP. And Stina and also her colleague Sabina have been traveling, well, literally thousands of kilometers, I believe, between the countries in a very active NIP, because as you can start to see from the numbers here, the estimation is that there are actually a very considerable number of farmers in Norway doing some form of cow-calf contact, maybe fewer in Sweden. So in that respect, I would say it's relatively established. Typically, perhaps dam rearing, maybe relatively small farms by European standards, and often with an automatic milking system. Then we have a group kind of in Central Europe, where in Denmark, Germany, Austria, and France, cow-calf contact is a little bit more established, and particularly on larger farms, this might be a foster cow system, and in smaller farms or organic farms, it's perhaps more typically a dam rearing system. So in Germany in particular, there are certainly more than 200 farms which are listed publicly, and within the group there, Saro, our facilitator, has got farmers with up to kind of fewer than 10 cows, but also even up to 1,500 cows. So really spanning the size there. France is also quite well developed in cow-calf contact, particularly perhaps for, again, foster cow rearing on these larger farms, either for heifers or for beef production. In Denmark, the farms tend to be again smaller farms, and there are much fewer numbers perhaps known about at the moment. But as with all of these numbers, these are absolutely certainly an underestimate, because this is only really what we sort of definitely know about. And again, in Austria, perhaps the farms are dominated by smaller organic farms, and with a few kind of larger foster cow systems. Then in the UK, there are at least 21 farms that we know of. We have around, I don't know, 7 to 10 perhaps in the NIP itself. They range from micro dairies and to larger farms with more than 150 cows. Mostly doing dam rearing, but a couple of foster cow systems are also present. And then in Romania, so you may be aware that tie stall systems is the most common form of dairy farming, particularly on smaller farms, although there are also kind of larger freestall farms in Romania. And Dino, our facilitator there, has found several tie stall farms that are doing cow-calf contact, and they would be typically tied at night, but then out during the day on pasture or with kind of a free movement area. So in total then, through this process, but also other sources. We believe that we found at least 545 cow-calf contact farms across Europe, which is, I think, really a huge increase in perhaps what they would have been 10 years ago, for sure. And then I'm also very pleased to say that we have Rachel, an academic in New Zealand, who has got a collaborating NIP, which covers Australia and New Zealand, and she's had her first meeting with her group, bringing together farmers there. So as you will maybe imagine, there's some different systems. So this very strong pasture-based system in New Zealand, which has its own challenges. And then in South Australia, there are also some farms that have come together. So we're very happy to be collaborating outside the borders of our kind of TransformDairyNet heartland. And again, if anybody is interested or keen in getting involved from outside, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, I just want to come back a little bit then to some of these, the terminology. So very helpfully, there was a great paper written to kind of nail down some of these for us. So as you might have heard me talking already, one of the first aspects that can vary between systems is whether calves are reared by their own dam or whether they are fostered onto another cow, typically in that case with some additional calves. So it might be, say, 3 calves fostered onto another cow who is then typically not milked, and just her sole job is kind of rearing these calves. Whereas in the dam calf contact system, the dam will typically be milked at the same time as rearing her own calf usually. And so here's an example, and perhaps maybe I guess the dam calf systems are very common in organic farms, in smaller farms, and the foster calf system is more usually the way to manage very large numbers of calves, the farm. And then we also have this kind of hybrid system, which I've only kind of relatively recently become aware of, where the calves might start for a period of time, like let's say 4 weeks, particularly if there's local legislation like in Germany that prevents movement off the farm for that period. And then they transition across to a foster cow, maybe, and to be reared then for the rest of the time. So it's not exclusive to Germany. We also found this in Norway and France and other countries as well, but is quite common, certainly in Germany. So I'm very keen to hear from you whether or how important it is to you that dam and foster cow systems are clearly distinguished, for example, on a labelling. Does this matter to you? Do you think that this matters to other people? Go ahead and vote, and we'll just watch them coming in. I'll just give people another 10 seconds or so to get logged on, which I can see people are still doing, which is great. Fabulous. Okay, so it definitely seems to matter a lot, or quite a lot, let's say, for these two systems to be distinguished in some way. And I guess that is sometimes the case, requirement in standards, or but not always. We also have a group that is convening to look specifically at the issue of labelling standards, definitions, and what these things might mean. So all of this will certainly feed into the information for that group. And I guess we don't feel we're necessarily the arbiters of this, but our task is to bring together the relevant people to have these discussions. Okay, then the next variable that we see between our farms is whether the cows have full-time contact and full contact. So full-time contact, i.e. 24 hours a day, and full contact, i.e. they are completely able to do what they like. They are not restricted from, for example, suckling by a nose flap or some other method. And they might just have the separation during, for example, milking or feeding times. Although I have to say that one of the questions that or the queries that farmers often raise who don't do CCC is like, what happens at milking? What if a calf comes into the milking parlour? And the farmers just don't find this a problem at all, because after a very short amount of time, the calves don't bother to go through the milking parlour anymore because they find it very boring, and they know that the mother is coming back. So this is the kind of a perceived issue, but in reality is a non-issue. But I would say, so we have a lot of farms that are providing full-time contact, at least for a period of a number of weeks. But we also have a number of farms who are doing part-time contact. They might be separated for part of the day or the night, and they might have, for example, some form of restriction in the amount of contact that they're able to have. It could be sort of fence line at times, or it could be some other form. So this is an example of a farm in the south of England where, when they're out at pasture during the day, the cows and calves can be together, and then at night they are just put in a little kind of electric fence corral, and the calves are kind of ushered into there. They sleep the night in this little creche on their own, with their cows kind of all around. So the cows are very close, they just can't physically get to each other. Then the cows will be milked in the morning, and then after that morning milking, they're reunited for the rest of the day. And probably from the discussions I've had, it seems like separating at night is probably the most common form of separation if this happens, and then maybe this once a day milking in the morning and then being together in the day. And farms might separate at different ages. So some farmers have really said to me, I think it's really important to start the separation early to get a routine going, so the calves and the cows know what's happening, and they stick with this. And then others say, no, it's really important. They need to be together, especially in those early days and weeks, for the calf to kind of have as much opportunity as it can with the mother. And then we start separating a bit later when the calf gets older and potentially able to take a lot of milk, and getting them ready in the end for weaning. We have very few farms in Europe with what we sort of call short-time contact, but this is something that I'd seen in India very frequently when I worked there for a short period of time. So these are farms in Kerala, where typically the calves would be tied away, or maybe sometimes in some sort of proximity to the adult cows, and then brought at milking times. So probably twice a day to suckle, perhaps a little bit before milking, and then allowed to stay for a period of time kind of after that is done. Some of our facilitators did report that this happened in their region or in their NIPs, but it really doesn't seem to be common at the moment at all. And then we have this possibility about who kind of controls access between cows and calves. And in housing systems, one of the ways that this can be defined is whether it's the cows or the calves that are able to have control over this. So probably I would say most commonly in our farms, either the cows and calves just have completely the same area. For example, if they're on pasture, it's kind of 100% resources. There might be a little creep feeder that the cow can't physically get into, but they either have shared area, or the calves have their little creep area with some extra resources like some feed, some additional bedding, some heat, and so on. And you can see in these photos two lovely pictures at either side from the barn here in SLU, where the cow-calf project has been going on now for 6 years. And also then a system in Ireland where the calves can have an area underneath the fence when they're out at pasture. And so here's a couple of creep areas that I'd seen. As you can see, they tend to be this typically bedded, particularly if in a cubicle environment. So then there will be kind of loose, a loose area in general, bedding, maybe some additional protection against the weather. So those little igloos there, which actually also had heaters in them. And then the calf can have free access in and out. And the calf on the right was a farm in Norway that I visited. And this cow actually was sort of coming to talk to her calf. And the calf was coming out and was so excited, was doing like a lap of the cubicles, running the mother ragged as she tried to keep up and follow it, and then dashing back into the creep area. And then mum kind of comes along and says, "Oh, right, you've made it round here." And then off she goes again. And then perhaps less commonly, but seems to be, there seem to be a few systems in Sweden, certainly, where the calves are in their own zone, but then the cows are the ones that choose to come and have access to the calves that are there. And there may be other resources there available, like here's a nice lying area, for example, a resting place. But sometimes it could even just be kind of almost like a suckling pen or something. One of the other very large variations that we've got between farms is the weaning or separation age and how it is done. So really we're seeing farms weaning or separating anything from about 5 days through to natural weaning. I mean, 8, 9 months, or just keeping them together even till the next calf comes. But I would say quite commonly people are doing some form of stage weaning. So it could be with nose flaps or fence line to kind of try and minimize the stress at weaning. But also a number of farms are just doing abrupt weaning, so just completely taking away. And when I've spoken to some of those farmers, they typically say things like, well, they've had this really good time together. And yes, it might be stressful, but I think it's still a lot better than if they would never had the time at all. And somehow, we can cope with this. We manage this. It's a little bit noisy for a time. So I have a question for you again. What do you think is the minimum acceptable weaning or separation age for cow-calf contact systems? So please go again to the Mentimeter. I don't see all of the options up on the screen now, so I'm not exactly sure what will happen with that. Is it working on your?
It's not.
In your devices?
It's not.
Maybe it is now. Yes, great. So I've just had to pigeonhole you in a little bit to some options. Just pick the nearest one that you think seems right for you. Right, about half of people have voted already, so I just give people another few seconds to vote. Very interesting. So looks here like there's very, it's a very small group of people who would vote for less than 2 months. And then, as you can see, 2 months is most common, but it's going right up to more of a natural weaning type of age as well. Thank you so much for that. So then we've got the issue of system. So definitely we've got lots and lots of smaller, maybe organic farms. You can see the farm on the left. The cow has horns, she's at pasture. This would be quite typical. Here's one of our tie stall farms down below in Romania. But I can't stress to you enough that if you can think of a type of dairy farm, then that type of farm will have CCC represented, I can almost guarantee you. So very large farms, organic, non-organic, automatic milking systems, parlour milking, pasture, no pasture, it's there. So for me, that's one of the kind of greatest findings, that it's essentially possible in all systems. It's just a matter of working out how to do it and learning from each other and from farmers who, of course, are already going ahead and doing it. And one of the things that we found that really varies between our farms is how they sell their milk. So the three at the bottom, Kalverliefde, who you'll hear a little bit more about the journey for them in a moment, ethical dairy, the cow and calf is up front and center as part of the marketing and the communication strategy with people buying the milk. But we have not found that for everybody. So, for example, the two at the top, they're both farms in the UK that I've visited. So you can see that it's raw and raw milk. That's perhaps highlighted in the Peckforton farm. And the farm on the right, there's no mention about cow-calf on there, apart from very small writing on the back of the bottle. So it's kind of much more, kind of like whole, and raw milk is a big thing. Also, glass bottles seems to be a big thing that people are kind of like driving for many kilometers to come and buy milk out of glass bottles. So that's been a big surprise to me, because for me, the cow and calf is kind of central to it all, but it's absolutely not for the consumers that some of these farms are selling to. And the most interesting thing, and I really would like TransformDairyNet to focus on these people, is that we have got many farmers who are doing cow-calf contact, but just selling the milk into the normal milk systems. So they get the same price as the neighbouring farm who is not doing cow-calf contact. As an example, that farmer that I said with the calf running laps of the barn, she is one. She is doing that. She is somehow making it work financially for her. So what is it about her farm where it's possible to do that? And she's able to continue as a financially viable farmer, whereas many other farms, cite again and again that the economics is the major barrier. And I think it's probably fair to say that we haven't done enough so far, kind of looking at the economic, just the economic situation, let's call it, because I hesitate to even say, costs to CCC, because I don't think it necessarily always is a cost. But I'm very fascinated, and I'm hoping that we will find and be able to learn more from these people. And often these people, they don't have necessarily like an Instagram page, because they're not trying to direct sell, and they've kind of come out and we haven't known about them at all. And then they've just said, like, no, this is how I farm, this is what I do. And they just sell the milk in the normal system. Okay, this is an opportunity for you finally then to tell us a little bit about what you think. So I'm interested to know whether you think the term cow-calf contact is, whether there's a better term. So you can just write no. Now I'm hesitating to know whether it, yes, let's just see if it comes on there. So it should be a free text answer, is it there? Yeah. So you can just write no if you think it's fine, or if you think there's a different or a better term that you would like to use, then please just write it in and we can see. So people saying it's fine. Okay, so far. Not sure is also fine. Farming. Cow and calf together, cow-calf togetherness. Approved CCC. Interesting. Okay. So I guess it seems the majority of people who responded there are essentially happy with CCC or in some way, or maybe we want to differentiate dam rearing from others. Mother's love. I guess that would be dam rearing, or not maybe. Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. So I want to just finish by telling you about perhaps one of the farms that I think is probably most unusual that I've come across. So this is a farm in Ireland. Well, I even hesitate to say farm, because essentially John's got a large hillside covered by heather, as you can see. with 16 Drummond cows on there. And I think in other situations, we might even call this conservation grazing. But the cows are there, they're eating heather, they're eating a sort of a non-perennial form of grass that pops up in the summer. And he's already selling some of the meat from these animals. Now, these cows are a traditional Irish breed. They are now known as a beef breed, but they were typically what people would call a house cow. So it would be by the farmhouse, maybe one or two of them, and they would be providing dairy products for the farm in the last centuries. He is, for the last few years, he's been milking them once a week for about 6 weeks over the summer. So he gathered them in. He has a small kind of corral area. He separates the calves off for the night, but they're together by a fence line. And then he milks the cows in the morning. Despite them being basically unused to ever being milked, they seem to be fine. They are known as being a placid kind of animal, perhaps unlike some of our other beef breeds. And then they reunited and off they go off onto the heather hillside for another week and then come back in again. And then he's making cheese out of this milk and putting this into the meat boxes that he has. So he's very much kind of pioneering, maybe it's a new system or even an old system, I don't know. He has a lot of questions about this. And, can he do this twice a week? Can he extend this for longer? These sorts of questions. And then I have a lot of questions about what systems like this, because it's easy to write it off, isn't it, as being kind of very small scale and niche and so on. But actually, everything is contributing to providing food in some way. What about if we did more of a sharing system with all of our beef animals that are currently out there doing this? What would that bring in terms of dairy for this? Anyway, I thought I would share that case with you. And then just to highlight to you just a little taster that we have a very large survey that we've just gathered in the information from, and we're busy analysing, and we will, of course, share it with you in due course, but we're absolutely delighted at the number of responses. So you can expect more information about the variety of practices that are happening across Europe and the views of these various different stakeholders to come in the future. And I really want to thank all of the partners and collaborators, and very especially the facilitators that we have of all these farmer groups within the TransformDairyNet project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siobhan, for updating us on numbers and systems. And we have time. Sorry, I'm not on, am I? I'm not on for the room. Now I'm on. You were talking numbers of farms in different NIPs, saying that it's fairly common and established, for example, in Germany. And for the context, I would just like a quick update on the total number of dairy farms in Germany. Does anyone know? No.
Estimate around.
Yeah. No, total number of dairy farms as a whole.
I think it's now 3,000.
3,000. Yeah. So that's almost 1% being contact farms then. Yeah. So it's a larger proportion than in other countries that we know of, but it's still, from a farming community perspective, this is an unusual system, right?
Oh, yes, it's unusual.
Yes. So just to keep that in mind, while there are other parts of the world, sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, where restricted suckling systems is still the main system. And that is to do with mechanization, where electricity and clean water is a shortage and labor costs are low, cows are hand milked, and then it makes all the sense in the world to combine suckling and hand milking. So I just wanted us to establish that. Are there any? Yes.
something because I made it up. It's my home county, so it's around 40,000.
Yeah, so around 40,000, and that brings it to like 0.5%. And this is interesting because 0.5% in Germany, that will make it as common in Germany as it is in Sweden, because we've identified 12 contact dairy farms in Sweden, and in Sweden at the moment we have 2,650 dairy farms. So I think this is just a good reminder that maybe the development is fairly similar in different European countries. It's just that from a Nordic perspective, Germany sounds a lot, and then of course Norway is a lot. So the total number of dairy farms in Norway, does anyone, Julie, Stina? 6,000 dairy farms, and almost 200 of them have contact. Yeah. I don't know, Emma maybe knows the number, then 200 out of 6,000.
It's about 3%.
Yeah. So then suddenly Norway is in the lead then with a higher proportion. So it's interesting, and we'll see if we can do any comparison to the numbers from America and other parts of the world later today. Are there any questions or comments on Siobhan's talk from the room? I'm going to give the microphone to our colleague, Professor Diana Oliveira.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Yes.
Yeah, it's working. Thank you for the lovely presentation. I'm quite curious to know about the project itself. How is the communication that you have with policymakers in the EU level, thinking about like incentives for the future?
Well, we've had so far just a small amount of communication with the EU policymakers who I think it's fair to say are not particularly focusing their own activities on this, which is partly why we've now formed this, like the definitions and the terms group and so on. So we hope very much to engage and feed into that. We have also had some kind of discussions about legislative pathways that either individual member states or the EU could take. And so again, we hope to kind of provide some guidance about that for the future.
We have another question in the room. It's Adrian Croser, one of our PhD students.
Thank you. And thanks for a really enlightening talk. Thinking of John's farm, for instance, it was John, wasn't it? Do you tend to see a synergy or a correlation between cow-calf contact, perhaps other welfare-enhancing practices, and environmental sustainability on the farms?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, it's kind of the holy grail, isn't it, that we hope that everything goes together. So I would say currently, in general, the evidence, the sort of relatively small amount of evidence, but there are definitely some studies that show that kind of welfare levels in general are kind of higher than average on cow-calf contact farms. And that perhaps is unsurprising because it's partly about the types of farms and farmers who are going into this. Exactly how this fits in with a kind of a wider sustainability conversation, I think, is less clear. So the project is developing a tool to actually be able to measure carbon and water footprint of these farms, because typically the existing ones, separate off basically the beef production, or once the calf leaves the farm, it's then classified under another system. So the existing tools are not even fit to be able to measure this. So we will be making this tool, and that basically will enable others. It's not so much within our project to be able to do this, but I think it remains to be seen how it fits in. There's certainly advocates of like more of a dual purpose system as being more sustainable, but we will see.
Thank you. Hannah, are there any questions online? No? Okay. People online, you should be able to access a Q&A where you can put your questions, and if we see questions there, we will make our utmost to raise them. I think We will finish the seminar later with a general discussion where Siobhan can come back, but I think now we change speakers. Thank you so much, Siobhan. And our next speaker is Associate Professor Joao Costa from the University of Vermont in the US. And we're very curious and keen to hear him share about contact farms in America. We're just going to get all systems up and running. You need to go to view mode.
Yep.
Now maybe. This is very exciting.
Is it?
Yeah. Academic adrenaline sport.
Oh, I think.
Yeah, now it's up. There we are. So I give the word to you, Joao. Thank you.
Looks good. So, well, again, for whoever was here yesterday, thank you very much for the invitation and to share a little bit of the research we did. And then, well, I was tasked with the question of give obviously North America, we'll talk some of the projects that we are doing, but South America, there is no research here. It's just like I call some people, did a survey on WhatsApp and got some photos, and I will talk a little bit about that because I know that there are some projects going through trying to get a context of what is going on there, but there isn't anything very formal. And I know that Adraldo Zanella and Juan Daroz are discussing to do a partnership even with Transform Dairy. They've been talking with me as well. We have a group, but that's more or less what is happening. And I think there are some interesting context on that. But I was asked to share a little bit some of the research that took us here to do some of the cow-calf research. And I will be very honest, when we started and Julie Johnson was there at UBC discussing some of these topics with Dan and Nina and Jeff and Anne-Marie. And we use her model actually to understand calf development. And actually this research ended up in cow-calf systems. And nowadays we are discussing it that way, but was not taught on that objective, right? The idea was never to develop or discuss cow-calf contact, was could we influence the calves based on social context that they experience early on in life. And I was very lucky actually to meet Julie there. And then it became now a decade of research, and obviously I'll talk a little bit about the systems. If you were here yesterday, I talked a lot about the natural environment and the natural life of calves. We, in my opinion, we still have like this beautiful model that is the beef cattle, especially if you go through some of the systems that are not in the northern hemisphere, to see what the natural environment, the social, somewhat the nutritional, but definitely the cognitive development of these animals. And I always like to, I always show the same slide discussing that there was a transition where we have cow-calf contact pretty much as our standards. We went to hutches. I'll not discuss all that history, but got to the point that we are coming back. But I always like to say that we always had farmers throughout the world doing things that were different than the classic hutch or the classic pen. If it is the foster cows, if it was pair housing, group housing, and many of these systems that we have. And that's, I think that heterogeneity is still present in the industry. And I think we are just highlighting some of these systems that we have. And it's becoming even more complex. I'll talk about some of that. I will bring the question. I will not give an answer, but is it cow-calf contact when we bring a dairy heifer into a cow that is, well, a beef cattle or a beef cow that is only job to raise that animal? And that's, I will discuss some of these systems as well. So yes, we are here, and I will talk about some of the research and go through what we've been finding lately on these then hearing systems. And I will start, and we will like all the research that I will show on the calf development to say that was that focus on the calf itself. Even yesterday, I was trying to make that question that I think we need to talk more and more about the cows. I think our then hearing systems were set up as just a calf management system, and I think that is a more holistic way for us to think about it. But we were very interested on the sensitive period theory for calves. Canada in the time was going through the huge discussion about social isolation of calves. Many of us were there doing research, trying to think on how that social isolation that, well, dairy calves and especially dairy ruminants that are goat and sheep as well experience so a very long social isolation generally in the industry for, between 30 and 90 days, depend where you are in the world and how it's affected. And there was very little research in cattle, obviously rodents and others. Since I have this big joke that every time I go to Wisconsin, I always say that my favorite scientist in Wisconsin as a dairy scientist is Harry Ball. That was a psychologist, but we know, right, that there is a lot of influence of social isolation. And that discussion was what led us to think, like, could we use a different model on calves? And actually what really happened was that pretty much there are very few models as strong for social isolation as we have in dairy cattle. And we use that model that at that time was a discussion. Can we use the group housing as a model? As I mentioned, the discussion went further. Could we create a system that the calves had through social experience? So the classic model was a calf that was an individual pen for 60 days in comparison to calves that were on a calf crib that could come throughout the night into the system. All the trials that I will show are on exactly same setup here. We had other setups to the time, but the calves could be on the calf crib from morning milking to afternoon milking, so 7:30 to 4 p.m. And then at night they had was a calf driven. At that time we didn't have the name, but it was a calf driven system that they could go through a door there was here and stay inside of the pen. With the calves, one thing that we did, and you understand why, is that all the cows had their udder protected. So the calves had to come and we fed them, well, by hand in these trials. But we also had an automated feed actually in other trials. The cows were not protected. And the idea was to use the social model of obviously calves on the same age, conspecific on the same age, but also their dams and other adults to see if it would influence many things. And the idea was, does it influence cognition? Does it influence other discussion? And I will show some of the data very fast just because they asked me. And the idea was, there was a lot of trials that we did before, trying to see if they fed the performance, and other developments were similar. But then actually one of the students were discussing learning abilities of these animals. And we had the calves, every single calf trained in a computer that in a go and no go task, where if they actually, the video is in the opposite, but half of the calves were trained. If they were on the right color, they could get milk. If they didn't, they got 1 minute of punishment, or like just milk withhold. And you'll see the calves actually learn really fast. We train hundreds of calves on the same task. If they touch here, they could see this is a negative. They don't touch. If it's the right color, they go there, we give them 300 ml of milk, and they were super keen to learn. Actually, very surprising. They learn more or less in, I think it was like 6.7 days in average, or 13 sessions. And the social housing here, I remove every other group, will be always related to the system that I just showed on the hearing. And then we found that was very similar learning abilities between the two groups. But that was actually our hypothesis that they would have cognitive indisposition to learn in a reversal test, or they would not be flexible, adaptable enough after they learned and had something written in their protocols on how to work through this task. So if the calf was white, now would be negative for the punishment, or the opposite. For 3 sessions in average, actually 3.5 sessions, none of these calves learned. I always like to say that we actually fed the calves 20 minutes after we didn't starve these calves for a day and a half. And obviously in the same time, they learned the same task. And if you see, and it's actually, this has been done a few times now, and we have an average of 18% of the calves that ever try the other color when they come from the social isolation. What is a very, very interesting, well, interesting is a good way to say, maybe not the most happy way to think, that most of the calves are going through some system very similar to that when they're exposed to the industry. And it went through a lot of discussion, what type of contact was needed. This is not the point of the discussion here, but we did a lot of intermediate social environments for these calves, from the simple one pair to like late pairing of these animals. And it's very interesting, the ability, well, the impact of age. And I will not have the time to go and dissecate most of this data, but most of the trials that we've been doing for the last decade, we always find that the time is actually more influential than the complexity of the system. But, and then the question was beyond just the cognitive ability of these animals. Heather Neve, that is now a faculty at Purdue, at that time was discussing a lot of pessimism or mood shift in these animals, and did this trial. We did this trial where she was interested in see if the calves would exhibit a negative judgment bias after a challenge or during a pain scenario. I will just use the methodology because I think it's easy to find, and I will talk about separation. But the idea was very simple, was would calves that experience post-operative pain would exhibit a negative judgment bias doing an ambiguous test on a go, no go task. So same setup that I showed before, with positive the milk, red would be the negative, and we had the ambiguous tasks or colors in between the whites and the reds on 25, 50, or 75% red on these animals. And we presented that to the animals, and would see the response, the very generalized response that we expected before the trial, before the postoperative pain experience. And as we expected, or as Heather expected, we found that negative bias or negative more concerned ambiguous response when we are presented to those colors. And I will not spend too much time discussing the details, but what we did, and Dr. Juan Darosa, that's now a professor at the UC in Curitiba, came with the idea that if we use the same task during the horning, what would happen to the calves that we're using on the model of the dumb hearing system after separation? Would they show the same sort of negative bias toward the test? And what we found was exactly the same. So with the horn calves, and then when they were separated from their mother, they showed the same negative response that these animals had shown on the post-operative pain, what was super interesting. And even after 36 hours, it got to the same level that we seen on the dehorn. And that brought us even to more questions. There was the idea that these calves were developing without any social opportunity to learn what to eat, where to eat, how to eat, and obviously feeding behavior development. It's very important in dairy calves. And we had this question like, would these calves actually be more proactive or more easy to learn some of the tasks related to feed, and especially be more adaptable when we change feed in these setups? There are more to it. I cut a lot of it, but the idea was we developed and presented these animals with a novel food neophobia test. We did with carrots that came from one of our students used to go to feed some of her horses, and I was like, oh, that's a good test. And we did that to calves, but we also did with hay that they never were presented with, and some of these animals had seen just TMR or grain throughout their entire life. So same comparison between individual and very complex social house, and we have like a repetition of 3 or 4 trials with very similar data where calves are much less neophobic to new feed and much more adaptable to new setups when they come from a social environment, even if the social cue that was given to them was not presented at the time, because these novel feeds were never been seen by the cow. And we actually did a trial now with the cows present, and they are even less neophobic than when they were alone, not just in the amount that they ate, but they are much more likely to eat in a very short amount of time and much more likely to present. One thing that I always like to say is that, yes, we use this very complex social system, and then throughout time, and even Dr. Wallen that is here, we find very similar data even with pair housing. So the complexity of the social housing sometimes have not been as powerful as it is the age that these animals are presented with social cues. So my focus just talked a little bit about some of this research that we did with calves to come and discuss some of the context of the changing gears completely on the the second part of the presentation today, that is to talk about the North American systems and a little bit of the South American systems. One thing that I will say is that I will talk just about them hearing, because that's what our research has been on. However, it's growing very fast, the foster cow systems in the United States. I don't have real numbers here, will be my own educated guess, and again, WhatsApp interviews, but the numbers are now, I imagine, on the hundreds of organic and other label farms. And most of it is because it's very complex to find milk replacer that is organic in the United States. So people are using the foster systems to do so, and more to decrease labor because of I don't need to talk about the labor shortage that we are experiencing. So there is a lot of foster systems happening in a myriad of ways. But here, wow, the research that was done and the identification of the farms have been on the done hearing, and those are the numbers that I will show. I don't have a percent of farms. US has something around 23,000 farms, and I could not give a good estimate of how many foster farms we have in the system right now. However, so this is a trial that is led, was a NIFA grant, but it started on a discussion with a Facebook group, actually, that was trying to put all these farmers together. Dr. Krautzinger got this grant to try to first identify and then describe what the farms were doing and the, welfare-related variables of these animals in the systems in the United States. I will talk about two parts of the project, marine during watchers is doing the animal side and farm description. And then Dr. Emily Nogues, that is now here in Aarhus, but was there in Vermont, was doing the farmer's perception and especially how they got to that system. So the idea was, can we identify the farms? And if we did identify the farms, could they accept a visit or 3 visits throughout a whole season, right? Or a whole year, a whole full cycle of production? And then could they participate not just on the data collection and data acquisition of the animals and all other inputs that they had at the farm, but also participate in the questionnaire? And then the third phase is focus groups with some of these farms. And what I will try to present is the animal side, some preliminary results from Emmeline on the farmer's perception, but the focus groups are still going to happen. So these farms were visited 3 times last year. We get milk samples. We did every single animal observation every time. Well, when I say we, were Maureen and her team. And then we got all the data from these animals. I will try to present just the animal side. One part that I will not present here is the milk quality, but we observe and we've been discussing with some of you, I think, is the fat level, the decrease fat level on milk was seen there, as I've seen here in other scenarios. So we identified 12 farms, actually identified 14. 2 of them, one was a micro dairy that had two cows, and then they didn't have calves with cows at that time. The other one we heard of, but we never got in contact with them. I think that is one more that I heard in Alberta, but 15 farms would be what we got to know that does any sort of done hearing contact. And as you can see, has this very broad spread over the continents that goes from Colorado and actually many of them around the East Coast, but then there is a farm in Florida, one in South Carolina, and 2 in the Midwest. And well, if you know the United States, this is a 24 some hours, so here is a 36 hours. Obviously, we visit these farms, or the team visit that farm, all flying throughout the country, what increase a lot of the hardness of this trial. So we were able to look through 430 cow-calf pairs throughout the experiment. The average per farm was 36 cow-calf pairs, not cows in milk. The cows in milk is 100 average, so that average is very biased because the range goes from 17 cows in milk to 275. And then we had 14 to 96 cow-calf pairs at the time of the visit as a range. For this, 10 of these farms actually sold direct to consumers, and 2 of them put their milk on the normal food chain, the normal processing food chain. And most of them, 10 of them actually did not have a season. So they had, for us, was actually more complex to the all-year calving, because every time we'd have new calves would be better if it was seasonally, but that didn't happen. And most of them actually had any other certification, and 3 of them were not certified or labeled in any tin, but as they sold directly, they had their own label, their own marketing scheme. So from the 12 farms, 10 of them used the cow-calf system as a market or a niche market strategy. And most of them actually were Jersey farms, so 6 out of the 12, but there is a very broad use of breeds in these systems. And most of the farms that we went, they had like 60 days in milk from 0. Actually, for one, the long pair was 300 days in milk by the time we got. Most of them in the summer actually use pasture. There's 2 farms don't have any pasture use throughout the summer, but in the winter, most of them use some sort of indoor housing. being deep padded pack the most common. However, from the 12 farms, that is 12 systems of raising cattle, in as was discussed before, and goes from tie stall barn to pasture access to restricted, and I will try to show more or less what these farms try to do as management, and goes from very small, very concentrate systems to two of the very large in comparison to the others. Obviously, I still below the average of the dairy farm in the United States, where the biggest one of them had almost 300 cows in total, 90 some odd pairs of cow calves in Florida. So these animals, most of them did actually whole day, so 24 hours contact. 5 out of the 12 did the transition, so most of the time the calves were with the cows. However, had some time during the day, especially during feeding or after milking, where the calves were separate, and just one of them actually did part-time, where it was just at night. And we tried to look at most of the animals, and I will go even a little bit fast throughout it. But what we find is that the farms were very similar in BCS, lameness, milk condition, and the farms of similar characteristics in the United States. So one of the things that we identified a little bit different, or the hypothesis that we expected, is that most of them didn't have a colostrum management. 2 of them actually had a transition pen where they left the cow and the calf together for a few days, but most of them just put the cow and the calf in the group after parturition. 1 gave a bore and 1 tubed every calf, but everyone else just rely on the dam to do that process. We found that most of the cows were not lame, were not dirt more than expected. One of the big questions, especially that we got when this grant was submitted, was teeth condition and the skin condition of the cows that were in that system. We found that just 3% we had chaps skin, and actually one of the farm was the most of the system that we found. Same thing with BCS, and same thing with the calf health condition in general. One thing that I try to be always, and Marine has done an amazing job with that, is that we are very conscious that it's 12 farms that are in a 3 visits. But our biggest objective or hypothesis was, are these farms out of the range that we expect? And we found none of it throughout time. So it varied a lot in these 12 farms. Every one of them had a reason or a system of themselves. In very few cows or very few places, we found any welfare concern on the animals that we observe on this side. So the second part of it that was led by Emmeline was that, and is a little bit of a preliminary data. We are still going through most of the interviews and some of the analysis, but the question is very simple. These early adopters, how they got there, why, and especially the perceived ideas of the systems in the years that they are doing this practice. So the same farms, the same 12 farms, however, we got 18 interviewers, meaning that some of the farmers were, well, all the farmers were there, or all the owners were there, but some of the management and especially some of the associates were also interviewed in this system through a same structure, interviewed, and then we applied a thematic analysis that I will not go too much over, but I really want you to focus on the colors throughout, what I will show in the framework, where the blue will be if the person or the interviewer had a positive assessment of that criteria, of that factor, the red negative, yellow if was neutral towards that question, that factor, and then gray because it was the same structure, some of the people didn't discuss some of the factors that were presented. So I will not be able to go through all the topics, but the major clustering of the discussion points that went through the same structure questionnaire were the farm level consideration or the holistic approach of having this practice on the farm, some of the animal welfare, and especially the effective state of these animals, the relationship with the citizens or the outside world, not of the farm, and then some points of animal health and production. So when we talk about farm level consideration, and here obviously we have to have that understanding that all these 18 people did calf or dumb hearing, so they should be positive about it, but they were, because, well, the hypothesis, what is the farm level, the holistic approach that you take to have this new system that you adopt? And Emmeline have these two quotes that we took over from the interviews, and especially that idea that I think represents a lot that was discussed, that is, we will not do this otherwise, in the sense that now that we are doing this practice in our farms, this is the way that we think about it. The second one was animal health. We're very interested actually to see what they thought throughout this process. There's a major discussion for us how the calves will do, and most of them discuss that the calves do much better in comparison to the system, and especially here has 6 farms that still have the artificial hearing or the normal hearing of calves outside of the system that are not on them hearing. So from those 15 of them think that this practice has improved the system of animal health in their scenario, but especially one of the quotes that is still comes is in relation to the cows, that is, and led us to think, especially my group, led me to think a lot of the discussion of these farmers have been very neutral in relation to cow health. They didn't see any improvement. Some of them even discussed some of negative or neutral related. And I think that is a lot, at least a possibility to discuss some of these topics in our systems at least. And then in relation to animal welfare, most of them were positive. Some of them were neutral in relation to it. But the biggest thing that comes through is separation. And I made this cut because obviously we discussed a lot of it yesterday, but the farmers are very aware of the effective states of the calves, and the biggest challenge that they have, it's how and what they can do to diminish the stress at that time. And then as a final point that was taken from most of the questionnaires, that they have an outside public perspective to their farm, and all of them are very positive related to that in the discussion, that especially these farms that 10 of 12 have a direct contact with their consumers. They do that in a very positive way and have a big reason to do so. So just to finalize very fast, one of the major questions that we asked was what was the industry adoption perspective that they see, and actually was very divided between them, from people that think that we'll catch on, there is no other way to do so. However, there is a lot of people discussing some of the priorities that we could do on the bigger farms, and I think here has a context of the American dairy system that are very connected to large enterprise in general. So just as a conclusion for this part, I thought it was 40 minutes, 5 minutes, eh? More or less? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can have 5.
So, I will just, in the major thing was a discussion, and we don't have especially finalized the data of the assessment of mastitis and energy balance of these animals, but has been super interesting to see what these early adopters are doing. and just acknowledge the grant that Kate Krutzinger has and the team that has done most of it, traveling throughout the United States. And then they asked me, while we discuss a little bit the idea of the South American systems. Even we are discussing to have a network to try to get some of informations on that. And then I got the three types of farms that have become very common, were very common in South America, that do dumb hearing contact, and especially a lot of foster cows. And I put the discussion that we had, or the most used terminology, because yes, some of that contemplated, some of them I think challenged some of those points. One of the classic, still very classic in the mountains and extensive systems in South America, is to do once per day milking. So you milk cows in the morning, you release the calves with the cows throughout the whole day, and then you remove the calves at night. The cows stay grazing, you milk them in the morning, and obviously that cycle goes through time. This is still, we don't have a number, but I'm sure there is thousands and thousands of farms. We discussed to do a tour to show some of this system there. However, one of the types of farm that is becoming more and more common, that is the transition of these farms, is twice a day milking with restricted contact. So instead of like having once per day milking, the calves and the cows stay together a few hours after milking. So you milk your cows with some of the calves present, and then you release the calves and the cows for a few hours. You bring the cows back to the grazing, and obviously the calves stay on a calf bar. Super common. And then one of the things that we've been discussing more and more is that a lot of, well, if you see some of the breeds in South America, we use a lot of, or they use a lot of crossbreds. And the thing with crossbreds is that you need to keep the original breeds that you're going to cross with Jerseys and Holstein, and they have very complex milk letdowns. A lot of farms will do oxytocin, but a lot of farms actually will still use the calves throughout the whole lactation on the milking parlor to be able to milk these animals. The producing of milk is part of the enterprise, but most of the enterprise is actually to produce embryos for making F1s. So what happens is that, you bring all your cows and you bring all the calves, they know actually who their dam is, and you tie the cows and you milk them throughout. And more, a system that is happening throughout South America is actually using embryo transfer into beef cows to create a replacement heifer, a Holstein purebred replacement heifer. And is it them hearing contact? We need to discuss. These heifers goes into like high producing heifers. Actually, one of the parts that happened is when they got to 2-3 months of age, they go through actually a taming training and go into the normal dairy system. So this is becoming actually super common now, that the dairy heifers are in a very high price. So that is a context that is not a lot of, actually, I hope that we will do a survey, at least of perception of people, to get some of this question. I have to say that I work for the University of Vermont, and these people pay my research.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for an amazing talk, Joao. Happiness and joy is contagious, right? Which links into a big debate in Northern Europe about mental health of farmers. So that is yet another aspect on cow and calf contact, if that is a production system that makes the work environment better for the farmers and their staff. Are there any short questions to Joao now in the room? I think many people want to discuss with you, and we see that we really need to start mapping systems in South America and Central America, but also follow the developments in North America. It's really interesting to see how it's picking up. Hannah, are there any questions online?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Then you will come back later. We now have a 5-minute break in the room in Uppsala, and people online can also have a 5-minute break before the last presentation, which is the presentation by Janina van der Drift, who is the manager of the Kalverliefde market product. So in the room, please have some coffee and a sandwich and try some of the cow-calf contact milk that is provided in the glass bottles that Siobhan mentioned. It's from 4 cows in the university dairy herd who were in contact with their calves for 5 to 9 weeks in the beginning of their lactation. And we start again in 5 minutes.
Sorry that I
No. It's
thought it was 40 minutes. No?
yeah. It's maybe sit down. So it was great. Yeah.
Oh, it's us.
Staircase was right with to me. I was so I'd like throughout your whole.
You just hold your hair up.
I'm not sure.
That's the quickest way. Okay. I just
You're crossing the Boston Nicholas was so long.
Well, it's interesting that you need to.
I'm interested in all. I mean,
there's
really quite unique. Are there any? I'm not. I haven't followed this. Are there any more studies?
Okay, no, I wasn't aware. Yeah. On commercial farms or versus CCC. Okay, that's we're also collecting data, but we would need so much.
But would trend also? I mean, lower.
It's good that it is, yes. I think she probably wants to go. Yeah, otherwise I can enjoy my.
Yep, it's here. Then I go and double check it here.
Then you go to the toilet. Yeah.
I was wondering, is it true that you did?
We did not invite, but actually in.
Sedan people will let it. So I just let it run, so I don't forget to put it on with that. Yeah.
That's kind of a little. And I think this.
Fine.
And have you tried the milk?
Time, but also.
Have you tried the milk? Oh, that is good. Yes.
Was that batch?
We have plenty of milk. All right.
I do think that. We actually didn't have a lot of.
We were but these are, I mean, I don't work with calves. I work with calves in general, and now I'm particularly working on allowance.
Okay.
And then it's really, I mean, your studies are really interesting because it's also, we've gone from restricting something that we hope for their development, and then is had also what is overcondition. And I think we need to learn more what is good and what is over conditioned, because I think today, keeping in frame that we are used to looking at calves that have been fit. What is in the more body condition? I ask, and I would really love to hear. Yeah. Yeah, but I would really, this is really an area that I would like to discuss with you. What is overconditioned and what is actually normal that we are not used to it? I would assume, my idea is that those calves had really much. I've been able to watch, eat whistle. I've only been to Swedish. I went to I noticed also. I was wondering. So what?
É quase assim, tu tem que achar o carinha meio. Ah, por isso que eu não.
I would love if we could come together for a coffee. Swedish
I think that
Nej, den är nu redan på. You're live. Yes. Hello. You're live. Okay. So, welcome back, everyone.
just
There's been intense talking in the room and outside the room over a cup of coffee. And I hope everyone online also have had a chance to move around a little bit and be ready for today's last presentation. And I'm super happy to give the word to Janina van der Drift from the Netherlands, who is the first person that we know of who has a major experience of marketing cow-calf contact dairy products. So you're very welcome to Uppsala and to the network, and the floor is yours.
Thanks. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about marketing CCC products. And of course, I have to say I'm very honored to be here as a non-animal science person, just saying something about the business part. And to start, like, the word marketing always feels a bit dirty, maybe even, because it feels as if you want to sell something to consumers that they actually don't want. And the case of Kalverliefde shows that this is what consumers want. So there's not so much marketing to it. It's giving the people what they actually expect from animal products. So maybe I should, for next time, I should skip the word marketing and just say, we're just going to give the consumers what they want from the farmers. See if this works. Not. Yeah. So I founded Kalverliefde, and really, it was I was working for a big FMCG company, so a big international company in fast-moving consumer goods. So I have a lot of experience in selling products that people don't actually want or need, to be honest. And it was Corona time, so also a bit bored and, sort of in a midlife crisis, thinking about, am I going to spend the rest of my life selling products like detergents? So you can guess a bit in which company I was working, detergents and other cleaners that people, might not need, or at least they may not have to pay that much for them. Or am I going to spend my career on things that I really care about, which are animals? And I live in a very rural area of the Netherlands called the Green Heart. And it's green because there's lots of grass there. And I live amongst a lot of dairy farmers. And it was there when I was with my two daughters at a dairy farm on a Saturday. And they wanted to see the calves, of course. And I thought, oh no, not the calves. Because then I would see them all separated from their moms. And as an animal lover, I knew that was not a good thing. And it was my free Saturday. And I knew myself, think if I see this again, then I'm gonna spend my whole Saturday or even my weekend thinking of ways how we could do that differently. So it was there that I said, okay, you girls go in, I turn on the lights, and mommy's staying outside. And I thought that was so hypocrite that I thought, okay, I stopped drinking milk from this day onwards. But I'm not a fan of plant-based milk. So I just started, it was actually the start of a personal investigation for looking for farmers who kept the calf with the cow. And what I said, I was not bothered by any knowledge, agricultural knowledge. Being a mom, I just thought, well, if you have a calf, it should be possible to feed more calves or humans. So I just started my journey, and I visited some farms that kept the calf with the cow, also visited the farms that didn't, and wanted to know who and why they would not do it and why they would do it. And at a certain point, I thought, okay, I think it's possible. I think it's possible to collect the milk of the farmers that keep the calf with the cow separately and process them in a factory and even sell them to one of our former clients, supermarkets. So it was there when that moment that I thought, okay, I think I have the supply chain sorted out. I think I have a concept. I think I have the guts, being a marketeer for long, to put it on the market. And the first retailer, he said, well, we're not going to do this. I mean, this is not a good idea. And this, but the second retailer said, and I was really surprised about his first reaction. He said, how many stores can you supply? So there was a moment that I quit my job at that big company and started Kalverliefde. So Kalverliefde is the first, calf at food dairy brand, I think, in the supermarket, and comes from ethical, small-scale organic or even biodynamic organic farms in the Netherlands. And we keep the calves, the heifer calves, to at least 2.5 months with the dam, and the bull calves 35 days. And we're selling in major Dutch supermarkets now. So more formulas are joining, and even the one who said no at the beginning now sells Kalverliefde. But there's more to the name, the brand name, because Kalverliefde, it literally means calf love, or love for the calf. But it's a Dutch expression for puppy love, so the love between two young adults. And I don't know, but your first love is most of the times not lasting. So that's sometimes reassuring for the farmers that look at Kalverliefde, because they think it's not gonna last. But it's also sort of a metaphor actually for a love that's not being taken serious by the adult world, and that's what the industry is sometimes. That's how the industry sometimes look at Kalverliefde. Should we take this serious or should we not take this serious? But in general, I can say that the launch of the brand has really changed the whole discussion, at least in the Netherlands. So the industry is secretly taking this very seriously and watching us. NGOs are, the ministry is. So it's something that has opened the discussion in a very positive way. So yeah, puppy love might last in our case. I think also yesterday during the PhD, but I also came across today, is that we can think of all kinds of ways on all kinds of research that needs to be done for calf-fed food dairy farmers to start. But the first thing is money. So what you see here is the farmer Dirk. and he's from the north of the Netherlands, and he's just retiring this year. He's been doing calf food. He keeps his calves with the cows for more than 20 years. And before Kalverliefde, he did not get any extra paid for his milk. So he just did it out of his intrinsic motivation to farm as naturally as possible. And now he, with the coming of Kalverliefde, he actually got paid for the fact that he does that. But there's also another aspect related to it, and also touches on the mental health of the farmer. He gets a recognition for the fact that he does that. So he now sees all the extra effort that he puts in the milk. He sees that it's separately been sold separately on the shelf in the supermarkets, and that consumers actually want this. So I think that's a very big important part of the whole calf food dairy project, or let's say project always sounds like it has an end. So beginning, calf food beginning. We pay 12 cents extra per liter above the Demeter price, and with that we have the highest market price in the Netherlands. And it evolved. So we started with 5 cents, soon it went 7, 9, and now it's 12, because we learn and talk, and we are very honest and open to everybody, to the farmers. And when we have the feeling that the money is not enough, the amount of money is not enough, then we do need to increase it to make it sustainable also for the farmers. And now we have this quite good bonus to compensate for the loss in milk. We actually see farmers applying to sell their milk to us, which makes it for me easier to choose from farmers amongst the farmers that could deliver to us, and be able to even offer the farmers with the highest welfare the compensation that we give them from their milk loss. So so if you remember, if you recall the package of Kalverliefde, it's very pink. It has a very cheerful name, and every communication we do is positive and cheerful, optimistic, and never down talking to farmers. And the reason why we do that is, I show you here a photo of the road leading to my house. For the people who don't know, our flag is not blue, white, red, but it's red, white, blue. And blue, white, red is the sign, used to be in the sign when the Netherlands was still had a big marine fleet. And when a ship was in distress, they would turn the flag upside down. So this is a sign of the farmers, and it was 10 kilometers, but it was across the country that the farmers were in big distress. So when I started Kalverliefde, it would not make sense to also attack the farmers on the point that they separate the calves with the cow. So I decided, no, I have to be positive and build bridges between farmers and consumers that want more animal welfare. And I think that really helped. So what I see here is that farmers do want to talk to me. They sometimes don't want to talk to the NGOs because they feel attacked by them. And that's what I needed. If I want to help them to make the transition towards more towards keeping the calf with the cow, then they need to stay in. You need to be able to approach me. We also work with NGOs like, for instance, Eyes on Animals, because that helps also in proving that our calves and the dams have indeed increased welfare. But going back to the dirty word of marketing a bit more, if you sell something with higher welfare, it's also oftentimes it's also at a much higher price. And so we pay, for instance, the 12 cents cents above the Demeter price. The way it works in retail, roughly, is that you ask a higher price than to the retailer, and the retailer increases the price to the consumer. So you will end up at a higher price on shelf. And then the risk with a fresh product like dairy, because in the Netherlands we consume our milk fresh, is that when the price is high and consumers don't want to buy it immediately, that the product goes off in the store and the retailer has to sell it and has to throw it away before it's being sold. And the metric that retailers use for that is rotation. So a product needs to rotate fast. Also, in terms of margin, of course, is the faster rotation, the more the retailer earns for the product. So the challenge for Kalverliefde was to immediately start rotation because it's a fresh product, even though it's highly priced. And just to show you a little bit of what prices are in the Netherlands, like a normal private label. So the biggest supermarket in the Netherlands is Albert Heijn, costs like 95. Oh, I put it as of a half liter. That's unfair. So let's say 1.20 for a liter. Organic milk is 1.45. The Arla organic milk is 1.99. And then you've got Kalverliefde, 2.49. So it's quite a price premium. And then being able to sell it immediately, that's a challenge. So for any product that you sell in the supermarket, you need to increase the rotation. But if you sell peanut butter, for instance, then you have got some months to sell it because it will not go off before it's being sold. But our products turn off in a week or two. So you need to build awareness immediately. So that's the difficulty when you start to a product like this and you start to sell it in the supermarket, that you really, you need to do that. And you need to build this rotation immediately. So was also a choice not to sell it in the supermarket, of course. But I think that, if you really want to increase awareness of consumers about this issue, which was my goal, I mean, Kalverliefde is a way to help consumers think about more welfare for dairy cows. Then you have to be in the supermarket because that's where consumers buy their products. Of course, it's really nice if consumers do shop at farmers, and the shorter the chain, the better. But you have to also be realistic. Lots of consumers just buy their products at supermarkets. So we need to be there and play by the rules of the supermarkets. So which means really tell the story and tell it in big media like television. So I'll show you the ad, what we have, just to give you an impression of how we do that.
De melk die wij drinken is eigenlijk bedoeld voor het kalf. Maar dan levert het niks op. Dus worden kalfjes na de geboorte weggehaald bij hun moeder. Gelukkig sluiten steeds meer boeren zich aan bij Kalverliefde. Dat is melk van koeien die wel zelf hun kalfjes mogen voeden. Kalverliefde. Eerst het kalf, dan wij.
So I have to say no animals were harmed during... So this might be interesting for you guys to see. So I'm not so good at depicting things on the x-axis, but somewhere you see actually very, very clearly that their first year I did not do any big media advertising. So no radio and no television. It was not bad, to be honest. So it was already like, okay, well, people like it, selling around 5,000 liters a week, not bad. And that start was quite good because of all the PR we got. So a lot of television, a lot of newspapers, a lot of magazines. Everybody wants to talk about Kalverliefde because it also was something new, but also because it was positive. But you see clearly that, when the graph goes up, so the volume of the milk sold goes up a week. That was the moment that we started with TV and radio. And compared to that big company that I worked for, it was nothing in terms of media budget that I spent. But it's such a relevant message. So if consumers hear this, so they might hear for the first time, oh no, a calf. Oh wait, a cow gets a calf every year to produce milk for us. Oh no, this calf is being separated. Are we really doing that? I don't like that. Oh wait, I can change that by buying other milk. So it's very sort of simple process, but all the marketeers know that there are already 3 messages in one message. So the more complex you make the message, the more difficult and the less likely they are to actually change their behavior. So it's with this rather complex message, but very relevant message, the consumer went to the supermarket and bought our products. And what you then see is that rotation that I talked about goes up. The retailers are getting happier. They increase distribution. Other retailers follow the biggest retailer also. So we increase distribution further, and we can even expand assortment. That's a bit the game. And the challenge still. So you also know that, or I also know that as soon as your rotation drops, you can be gone as well from the shelf. So it's always sort of the scary thing of these products that you need to keep rotation high, and therefore the awareness. So the consumer needs to keep on going and buy our products. Just to go towards the end, does it work? Yes, I think so. We are available now in around 1,000 supermarkets, so 1,000 stores in the Netherlands, and we also sell to restaurants and bars. We expanded our assortment to yogurt, and we grew from 3 to 8 farmers, and especially the fact that we grew in farmers is, I think, the main accomplishment. What I see is that younger farmers are getting interested in adopting to the system. So not only the older farmers that already did it, but also the younger generation literally saying, we'd like to milk our cows the way the society expects from us. And we think that's how Kalverliefde is selling it. So I think that's one of the biggest results of our brand, that we actually really, really help the farmers in creating a revenue model for them to be able to keep the calf with the cow. And it's every time that we increase that the demand for our milk increases significantly. So for instance, if we add a new supermarket or a big coffee chain, then we can add a new farmer, because practically we can also not say, okay, hi farmer, we'll take a third of your milk, and a third of your herd can have calf dam contact and the rest can't. So yes, we are in a very practical and open situation with the farmers, that we say, okay, now we've increased, we see a demand increase coming up, can you deliver the milk to us? And we're now heading to 2 million liters sold in this year. And 2 million liters sounds a lot, but it's nothing in the Netherlands. But because of the visibility of the pink package on shelf, it feels a lot. And that's, I think, the good part of it. What's next? Maybe the rest of Europe will turn pink soon. I know that there's, for instance, in Belgium, there's a lot of demand for Kalverliefde because of there's no language, or there's half a language barrier. between the Netherlands so they can actually read what Kalverliefde means. But for instance, cheese is one of the best sold dairy products in the Netherlands. So yeah, can we do cheese as well? That's a challenge because you need approximately 10 liters of milk for a kilogram of cheese, which makes the cheese very expensive. But still, if I ask the Kalverliefde community, do you want cheese? Then they go absolutely nuts because lots of people already stopped drinking milk, but they can't stop eating cheese. So we, who knows? Maybe next time I'll be able to do a tasting of cheese. And then for the farmers that are present, maybe in the audience or online, we're having a conference in March especially for farmers. We also prioritize our seats for the farmers. It's a conference with CCC farmers around the world presenting their practice, and we do farm visit, a field case, and we're gonna make it fun as well. Something to look forward. So if you're a farmer and you think, I'm interested in keeping the cow with the calf, then you can look at our website and register for free. So that was the end. And if you have at some point, anytime, a question or think something's interesting for me, just send me a personal message and I'll try my best to answer as soon as possible.
Thank you, Janina and Kalverliefde. Thank you. I think you shared your story about this product so well. Just the distress in the farmers that you mentioned with the flags turned upside down. What was the reason for the distress?
Yeah, it was more a political statement, I think, big political statement. But
so in
government
timing,
not supporting farmers in general good enough.
Because the timing must have been at the onset of reducing dairy in the Netherlands. Yes. And then you come with a different product also at the same time. So the added stress on the farmers.
And what at the time it were elections, and there's a big farmer party won the election. So it also showed that the Dutch population supported farmers. If that's the case, and I think that's something you should take into account. Then it's not smart to also attack farmers.
No, it's not, and I think it's also it's something for all of us to keep in mind for having a good dialogue. Is that cow-calf contact farming is one way of farming alongside other good farming practices to not cause more splitting than necessary.
No, so if I can add to that, so if I talk to a group of farmers who are not really into CCC, and you always have to acknowledge the fact that it's not easy. It's not for everybody. Probably it's not for you. And then they open up and they think, maybe I can have a look once.
To leave the sort of first step to the farmers. And I'm stressing this because several of us working with cow-calf contact research have over the last year been contacted by different governmental entities around Europe to give input on new policy and such. So we see that it's picking up among policymakers, and just to be very wary of how ready we think the system is for any major policy intervention. Having said that, I would like to hear if you have questions or comments for Janina in the room. Yeah, Diana has. Well, I'll give it to you first because you're closer.
Thank you, Janine, for the amazing presentation. It was very inspiring. I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit of how did you start contacting those farmers to build up this group of 8 farmers that you have? How was this experience to put everyone together so you could create your company?
Yeah. Good question. But it was actually fairly easy because, yeah, Google is your friend, huh? So I just started with one, and he knows one, and that guy knows one, and the Netherlands is very small, so I just drove by, still company car at the time. So I just went to visit them and just looked, okay, which ones are closest together, and are they willing to deliver to me? Because they also need to like this concept as well. Yeah. It's very practical. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. I remember seeing the bottle of Kalverliefde at Albert Heijn, and it was really a revelation seeing that it was going mainstream in a way. It was in the supermarket. It was really big for this world. And in a way, I wasn't surprised I was in the Netherlands, out of all places, seeing, for instance, the success of Beta Lever welfare certification. Do you know what it is with perhaps the Dutch public that makes it work so well?
I actually don't think it's really related to the Dutch audience. I think it's more that the Dutch entrepreneurs are just doing it. So, I mean, of course, it's important to investigate everything, etc., but it's also just a matter of doing it. And I also think that Kalverliefde is not perfect. And it's a huge step for dairy industry to keep the calf with the cow. But there are much more steps that we need to take to further improve welfare. And when I started Kalverliefde, I thought, oh, this is not good enough. That is not good enough. That, and other people said, just begin, just do it, and we'll see how consumers respond. So I'm almost certain that, at least in Western Europe, and no offense to the rest of Europe, but it will be a success. Yeah.
I think from the Swedish geographical perspective, we tend to think that it's easier in the Netherlands and Denmark,
probably,
that are geographically put together.
Yeah.
Here, there's a risk that there would be enormous distances between both farms and consumers and between the farms. So we would need a group of geographically kept together farmers and a dairy to make it work, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But for instance, in the beginning, I could see where we were selling Kalverliefde. It was really also located in the west, around the big cities.
Yeah.
So just start in
close to yes.
Yeah.
Start in Stockholm.
Where how it goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Siobhan, please.
Thanks, Janina. That was really interesting. Just referring to your graph, so I know really nothing about selling milk or any products or anything. So you had that big step up from around 5,000 to 15,000 liters. So how did it work? Did you already know you had 3 times as much milk available? Were you not taking all of the milk already from those farms that you had, or how did you even milk to be able to sell?
So the first big step was was the distribution increase. So so the retailer saw, okay, the product is not rotating badly. We like the concept. We get a lot of positive PR from the NGOs. So let's just give it already a bit more distribution. But I know that when you new supermarkets are added, that first you get a drop in the rotation because you add, and you need to make more new people aware that they can also sell it in their supermarkets. So I just it is when we expanded distribution, I always increase awareness via the media. I always do more TV or radio, so that people immediately go to the shop, go to shop as well when there are new stores.
Okay,
that goes hand in hand all the time. Yeah.
But your farmers were already producing.
Yeah. So I knew. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I knew that the distribution increase was coming,
Okay,
so I just added already a farmer.
into that.
Yeah, just before that. Yeah.
So a lot of logistics.
Mm.
That would be too much for a simple academic, right? May I ask Siobhan and Joao to come back to the stage? And while you move, Hannah will do the question from the online audience.
Yes, this presenter have gotten quite a few questions, some quite small details and some broader. So from Margaret von Holt-Wenke, what does the auditing look like on the farms?
From Margaret Wenker asking. So the farmers are audited by Demeter and by Skal for organic dairy production. But we use Eyes on Animals, which is an animal welfare organization. They have an expert on cow-calf contact. He visits our farmers every year and he has a protocol in which he assesses the welfare of the cow and the calf. Yeah. Also in terms of, for instance, weaning and everything actually. Yeah.
Then Karin K. Has the question, what did you mean by we in the Netherlands drink milk fresh, pasteurized, homogenized?
Pasteurized, not sterilized.
Yeah, and
not UHT. Yeah.
And that a large proportion of your dairy consumption is milk rather than cream, ice cream, yogurt and such.
We also
comparatively to many other populations.
We eat and drink every dairy product, but the most is milk, fresh milk, not sterilized, pasteurized. Yeah.
Another detailed question about your brand, Luke Rauner. Sorry for the pronunciation, Luke. Is Kalverliefde only dam rearing or also foster systems?
Yeah, we have a mix of dam rearing and foster systems. The reason was that we didn't have many farms to choose from in the beginning. Now that we get more farmers applying, we can be more picky, and we would like to move to complete dam reared systems in future. Yeah.
Okay, and we will need to curb the rest.
We'll wait a little bit at least.
Yeah.
Janina, if you like, you can have a seat. So we now have our three speakers as a panel in the room. And I just wanted to tie your talks together slightly, starting with contrasting Joao's talk with Janina's, because with Janina now we talk about the marketing, we talk about the control and the certification, while Joao, the information you shared about South America, where this is driven by farmers because it's the easiest way to farm, right? So there is supposedly no one needs to check whether the calves are really with cows. Would you like to comment on this, like difference in perspectives?
Well, first I will not say that I'm a specialist, but I will talk about context. Two contexts that actually we were talking in the break. The first one is that there is a lot of generic providers for the Zebu cattle to be mixed in crossbreeding, and they do a lot of it because of the milk ejection problems that there is. So it's a management tool. But the second thing, it's like, well, we even discussed that, right? Like there was a transition from then hearing to a myriad of systems throughout the world. Depends on the restrict contact, and that is not just Brazil, right? I think it's a context of tropical countries around the world that do this practice of once per milk, and even New Zealand does a lot of it as well. And yes, there is no one needs to check, right? Like people do it because it's the way
that's the way
is done. And actually more and more, especially thinking on the associations with traditional production systems. A lot of them are required to do so. So we have some cheeses, some terroir that actually require you to do it. So then there are checking.
Yeah. And I think it's important to raise these differences because of it taints the perspective from anyone who wants to develop dairying, right, where you're coming from. And I also think it's important to share that this is done in many countries, and it may not be the best choice, for example, for sub-Saharan Africa to move towards an intensive European, North American type dairying system. It's good to share that we also see qualities and maybe that the systems applied in South America can have a big fostering role in that, to acknowledge that we have different possibilities in different geographical regions. Because we have seen that in so many other sectors, that the West does something that looks good and then people follow and it's not so good in the end. So yes.
I will just add, and actually one of our farmers in North America is the same. There is a huge influence of the beef cattle industry. And that's exactly what happened to the farmer that we interviewed. He was a beef cattle farmer that went into dairying. And then he was like, why would I manage these calves if the cows can do it for free? Yes. And that thought process is very intrinsic to the Brazilian foster system or the dairying system. It's like a lot of these people are beef, cattle, and dairy producers. And then they're like, I will not wake up every day and warm milk for these calves. I'll just let the cow do it.
Yeah.
And build production systems around that thought.
If I may carry that back to Janina, the meat from the Kalverliefde farms, does anyone have any plan to market that?
The microphone's working still?
Yes.
Yeah. So our farmers use local breeds, which are dual purpose breeds. For instance, Frisian Hollands breeds. There are plans indeed to market that meat separately as the organic and most animal worthy grown up beef.
Yeah.
But it is very difficult to sell that because, in general, if a calf stays 3 months, like a bull calf stays 3 months with the milk, the calf becomes very expensive, and then the payoff of that meat is 2 years later at least. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just think we compare cow-calf contact dairying with conventional dairying with separated animals. What if we instead said, so can we do something to improve sustainability of beef production by getting both beef and milk from those systems? And then it's not a loss anymore. It's a gain financially instead.
It's a connection that has been cut off by the industry. The connection between meat and dairy. We should,
there is an opportunity, I think, for discussion. I want to leave the last possibility to ask something to you, Siobhan, being the coordinator of TDN. If you have any questions to our invited speakers, anything on your mind before we close?
Well, I guess I'm interested to maybe hear from both of you, like how important it is in your experience for farmers to have contact with each other and have a kind of a support, and whether that always needs, or whether it's, or the most successful way that can be facilitated. So we are doing that ourselves, obviously within TransformDairyNet, but the project will end in 18 months. And so we are kind of looking at how we can continue that if that's a perceived need.
Yeah. Well, she will have a lot more to discuss that, but actually I will tell our history. What was super interesting, that from everything that we learned on this trial was that a lot of these farmers didn't know that other people existed. Some of them knew by Facebook or Instagram. Some of them knew each other by random occurrences in life. But the biggest motivation that they had was to make an event, was to discuss with other farmers, see what the farmers were doing, because a lot of them just created the system on their own farm. So yes, I think there is a huge need. We are even trying to put a little conference together, but what we did was some Zoom calls and worked super well. But and this is a very small sample that I'm discussing, but what these farmers were in here, there is a context as well, right? If we think about the American dairy industry, that now we have hundreds of thousands of cows in the same corporation, they see themselves very isolated and different. And so create a community was their biggest gain. We are discussing, one of the farmers are super excited to come here in the Netherlands to meet other people. They've been, even through us, meeting each other or Facebook. So yes, the answer for that is we don't have anything that is formally built to that community, but that's for sure the thing that they want to know the most and want to create. And especially they want just to see what other people are doing so they can compare and even try to create something better in their own farm, because most of what they created was by error and trial. So even the farmer that is coming here built a robot dairy with a side pen to do them hearing contact by, from his mind.
Yeah.
That has no architect, no plan, no nothing. He designed it with, so he's, so yes, the answer is yes, they would be more than love to, to be part of a community.
Yeah, I think it's similar in the Netherlands. So what you see is that they visit one or two other farmers. They know that they're doing CCC, but then they need to invent the wheel themselves. And even like, for instance, we just added a new farmer, and he's relatively young. And I thought, okay, I hope this is going. You have to give them a bit space, of course. I was thinking, I hope this is going well. So I called him, said, yeah, maybe I can connect you to another farmer. He's your age. Maybe you can, discuss a little bit together. But no, it's not necessary. No, I've thought it out. So, and when I visited him, he did. But it's a very creative way, again, one that I had never seen before. So yeah, they know sort of they get an idea from their colleagues, not too many, and then think of a new system themselves. Yeah.
Thank you, Janina. I would like to end on that note as a message for those of us working as vets and extension officers and in science, to remember that there may still be brilliant solutions out there that we didn't think of yet, which I think is important to remember. Thank you all online for participating, and thank you everyone in the room for coming today, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and experiences. Thank you.